when you were writing it, did you cry, and did you feel emotional, and did you think, oh, maybe this will make other people
I
feel
cried
emotional?
so hard when I wrote the final few scenes, and I'm not saying what they were, that the man in the office next door to me actually came in to check that I was okay, and I had to explain to him that I was actually just having a really good writing day, which I think he thought I was completely mad. But for me, it is a kind of litmus test. If I laugh, I think the audience or the reader will laugh. If I cry, then I can be fairly confident that the same thing will happen. If I don't, I tend to worry, because if I write a big emotional scene and I'm not moved, then something is going wrong somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And did you consciously decide to tackle these big, difficult themes, so assisted suicide, disability, and the British class system? They're all there. And did you set out to do that?
It's interesting. Often when you look back at a book that you've written, you realise that something else was going on in your life that kind of mirrored your interest in that. So in my own case, when I started writing that book, I had 2 relatives who required 24-hour care just to stay alive. And I think if you face that situation on a daily basis and you're dealing with that, you cannot fail to ask yourself fairly fundamental questions about the meaning of life and quality of life, and how long you can, demand that someone stays alive if you cannot offer them an existence that has hope or dignity or pleasure. And this was a daily thing for us, trying to improve a situation that felt pretty impossible. And at the same time, I just happened to hear a news story about a young man who had been left paralysed after an accident and who had persuaded his parents to take him to a centre for assisted suicide. And I was very shocked by this story. I couldn't understand their thinking at all. But, I think as a writer, you are, well, I am interested in the grey areas. I'm interested in the questions that have no right or wrong answer. And I suppose looking back, my own experiences at the time and that news story and some other similar news stories that were around at the time and have been there since, all fed into this one story that I felt a need to tell. And yes, I'm aware that some of these topics are difficult, but I've covered other difficult topics in the past. I've covered art restitution after the war. I've covered domestic abuse. Just because you write women's fiction doesn't mean you have to shy away from some pretty serious topics.
Did you ever worry about offending people, offending disabled people, offending people who have differing opinions to you?
I think the thing that I was really keen to do when I was writing that is maintain a balance. So in that book and also in the film, there are no right or wrong answers, or there's no how-to, there's no suggestion that one way is the right way. What I was very keen to do is show that everybody had a different opinion. And what I was interested in is almost an extreme situation, which is, what do you do if you have someone who is rigidly refusing to adapt to a different way of life? What do you do if someone just refuses and shuts down? And I've spoken to a nurse who worked on a spinal unit, and she said she'd had 2 patients in her life who just wouldn't engage. And I suppose that extreme situation was what fascinated me. How do you adapt to that? How do you cope when somebody you love is just refusing to do that?
I read somewhere that Elena Ferrante believes that portraying girls and women's lives and the love, the pain, the childbirth, the menstruation, all those things, she says that that's revolutionary, and it sort of feels like that would ring true to you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really important to me, I've said before, to write female characters that do things rather than buy things, or, women for whom finding the ideal husband is not the be-all and end-all. I'm interested in characters who are flawed, who make mistakes, whose lives are messy. Louisa in this story, she's charming in a lot of things, but she also gets stuff wrong. She makes a mess. A lot of the realities that she faces with Will are to do with all those sorts of issues. It doesn't shy away from those things. But that's real life, and that's the beauty of it. It's all in its messy, complicated, to which there are no answers glory. It's just, that's life.